Okay, today we have joining us Glen from Dublin, who's going to take us through a couple of experiences that he's had, and through listening to the show, felt felt inspired to come on and share them. So, Glen, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dara. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So to kick off, I know you've had a couple of things. Kind of just a couple of odd experiences that
Yeah.
that we spoke about before, and to kind of, I guess, start to orientate the listeners.
Mm.
I guess we start with the cycling bit that you experienced with going by. Well, you can. I'll let you tell it rather than me.
Yeah. Well, basically, I'm coming from an angle of like I wouldn't be a particularly religious person. I'm not religious or anything, but like I just and I wouldn't have much of an opinion about the afterlife or spirits or anything like that to begin with. Like I've always been an open book, I suppose. Like willing to. I like listening to stuff about it, and I like hearing other people's experiences. But and I've had a couple of experiences myself even before this one I'm going to tell you about, but might get back to that. But basically, a couple of years ago, I don't know the exact date, the exact year, but it's when one of the latest Star Wars movies was released just near Christmas, and I got the opportunity to go in and see the late showing.
Right.
So I left work that night, cycled in to see it. Went to the cinema as as a normal person would, and I was cycling home, and it was probably about 11:30 at night, and it was a December night, so it was pretty cold and it wasn't raining or anything, but pretty cold night. So I was well wrapped up, and I was cycling up close to where I live is in Glasnevin, and basically it's where I was cycling is a particularly steep hill. It's called Glasnevin Hill, for anyone from Dublin will know pretty well. And as I was cycling up, quite close to where I live, about 500 meters just to go, I just heard like loads of children like laughing and playing and screaming like you would in a schoolyard.
Right.
And I kind of, I was cycling so slow, I could actually just put one foot down and stop the bike. And I was, looking around thinking, like basically looking to kind of gardens and hall doors fairly close to where I was to see, was there like kids coming out of a house, or was there, and like just really vividly and loud.
Yeah.
I heard.
And
well, that's basically what I heard.
And was it like, did you hear like a couple of kids, or like was it the sound of like a schoolyard playing, so like loads of kids?
It would have been. It sounded like there were like 5 or 6 kids.
Right. Yeah.
But why I said like a schoolyard is it was that type of play.
Yeah.
Or like what you'd hear in a playground, kids,
Yeah.
running around, shouting, laughing. That was basically what I heard. And where it happened, I suppose, as well. Well, maybe a significant thing to where it happened, I never even really looked into it or did any research, was it happened right beside where there is a school and a convent. Right. So, like, then I was thinking, surely there's no one in the school. Now, this school, like, to get into the convent, it's huge walls. You're talking about 12 feet tall, big, old convent, 100-year-old walls, I suppose. So, like, there was like no way for me to even have a look around. But obviously, like no kids are going to be out at 11:30 at night, running around screaming, and like it sounded like, to me, younger kids, not like teenagers, or it sounded like your primary school children.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, you'd figure it out pretty quickly if it was teenagers, right? At that
of course,
yeah. But like, that's really interesting. So it had like a kind of like I mean, did it ever happen again going through that area? Did you ever experience that again?
Well, funny enough, like, anything that's ever happened to me kind of in the past, just like that, I always like have a question mark over, to do with, anything like say similar to this. I always kind of just forget about it and move on, if you know what I mean. Like I don't kind
Yeah.
of like really dwell and go, oh, I have to look into that, or I wonder what that is. I might talk to people or tell a few people the next day, oh, you never guess what happened to me, this is really strange. So that, like, I told a couple of friends and a couple of work colleagues over the next week, Jesus, like when I was, you know basically that story. And then I was, I think it was about 7 or 8 months later, I was going for a run again after work.
Hmm.
So I was in my running gear, and there was like, to get to the same area, it's basically the Met Office as well is across the road from where the first experience happened. And I was running from what would have been like Griffith Avenue, and you can cut through like this little back laneway to get to the same area basically. So I was doing a big loop from work and heading back that direction, and the laneway leads out to the kind of like the same road where the first incident happened. And just as I got to the top of the laneway, so as the crow flies, it would have been about 100 meters away from the first incident, but you would have had to go over a big building and onto the road. So like, there was, a fair bit in the way to where I was that originally, I suppose, in the first instance. But the same again, I was running, and just as I got to the top of the road, even louder this time, I heard the exact same children playing, lots of shouting, and this is probably about 10:30 at night. I finished work at 9 and I got on a big run, did about 10 miles. And same thing, stopped me in my tracks where I was looking around and looking for, where's this sound coming from? Where are these children playing?
Mm.
And like even across the road from where I was, it's the DCU Alpha campus, so it's like the technological campus for DCU. They had like, at the back there, they had like these big floodlights, going on. I was like, would there be like a football match? And like it was too late. There was no like football match going on or anything, and no further set. Like, it lasted
Yeah.
5 or 6 seconds. Like, loads of chat, like loud chattering and laughing, and then stops. And then I'm kind of looking around, waiting to see where's this coming from
Mm.
and what's causing it,
That must have been
And
quite jarring when it stopped.
yeah, it's nearly like a stop. When I stopped to realize what was happening. Do you ever get when you'd hear something and it might be happening for 4 or 5 seconds before you kind of stop yourself to go, oh, what's that noise? Like
Right.
even your
Yeah.
alarm at home,
Yeah.
when you put timer on your alarm and it might start going off, and then you're like, what's that noise? And then you're like, oh, that's my phone. Like it was the same thing. I heard it and I was running, and then
Hmm.
when I stopped to kind of go, oh, what's that? It just stopped.
Right.
So yeah, very, very, very peculiar. Two very peculiar incidents. I suppose the first one was more jarring in the fact that it was so late at night and it
Hmm.
was children's sounds. I heard that.
The young children.
Yeah, young children. So in my head, I was like, like, was there like? It's very hard for me to see that there was something unseen that was making the noise that
Hmm.
like kind of made it seem plausible, if you know what I mean. That
Yeah.
was
Mm.
not uh, something that wasn't there, I suppose.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so like they were kind of like two like kind of most recent things
Hmm.
like happened in that respect. That was like very, I suppose it was like very audio. You know what I mean? Like it was all within the ears and like listening and like
Yeah.
didn't see anything and like but like yeah,
Yeah.
very very unusual stuff.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing. It's it's one that I think will open up to the guests, or to the listeners to think about kind of
Yeah,
what they think is going on there. Because it sounds like being near a location like the convent, that it was just, it
Mm,
was a school or would have been historically a school for
yeah.
a long time. That there could be some sort of like residual thing there that you're picking up
Mm,
when you're going by it. Now, when we spoke, kind of before, you coming on, um, you told me about this other experience that you had, with your
mm,
son. Now,
yeah.
I've been thinking about this, since we had that discussion. I've got some thoughts on it, which we can go through
Yeah.
afterwards. But if you'd like to take us through that.
Um, well, I suppose as well, before I even talk about that, like I heard a great quote from, there's an ultra runner who I listened to her on a podcast. Her name is Courtney Dilwater, and she was talking about, she ran this 250-mile race in the desert, and she said she hallucinated the whole like
Mm,
the whole time. She said like she even hallucinated that she's seen like um, jaguars in the trees playing the cello, and she said like really vivid,
mm,
from exhaustion, from dehydration, from everything, and like
yeah.
um, she said like one of the hallucinations she had was she felt herself rise up from her body like miles into the sky, that she's so high that her view of the world was of like looking at herself like she was the size of an ant on the ground running along.
Hmm.
So like I'm aware like experiences I've had, like I do night shifts in work, and like
Hmm.
I'm aware what tiredness and I suppose exhaustion or dehydration and stress and all this can do to human mind,
Yeah.
and what can make people see things maybe that aren't
Hmm.
there, or hear
Hmm.
things that aren't there. So like the reason why I'm saying that is because this experience that you just asked me about,
Hmm.
that I'm going to talk about next, I was 100% seeing what I seen. Like I
Yeah.
saw what I saw. Like I mean,
Yeah.
and that's why I suppose I wanted to precurse it with, you know I
You,
suppose it was the most real experience I've ever had of,
mhm.
you know,
And you were
you know,
present. You were present, though.
fully present. And
Mm.
so basically, I suppose I get into it. Uh, as I said, I live in Glasnevin, so I do a lot of walking, young children, and my son at the time was 2, or going on 2 anyway. And I used to do, because I work shift work, I'd have a lot of days off during the week. So walk a lot with him into Botanic Gardens, around, like cut through the Glasnevin Cemetery to Botanic Gardens, walk around the gardens into the glass houses and stuff, and the usual parent child, trying to kill a few hours during the day. And so on a particular day, this particular day was really sunny, really nice day, and it was in September. Um, Nothing out of the ordinary. In the morning or in the day, my son was in great form. Um, he was only learning how he was learning how to walk, so that's kind of the age he was at. He was like
Right.
walking, but not brilliant on his feet, but he could walk and have a little run, whatever.
Yeah.
We went into the Botanic Gardens. Uh, I got a coffee. We went through the glass house, took some videos of him, because he was starting to learn how to run, and the usual really nice sunlight going through the greenhouses. We left the Botanic Gardens, and you can cut through the side of the Botanic Gardens back into the cemetery. Um, Walking through the cemetery, I just got like, not even a bad. I didn't get a bad feeling. I just got a feeling like something was happening. And
Right.
he was in the buggy. He was awake. Just blabbering on, and I'm walking. And the type of cemetery Glasnevin Cemetery is, it's very big, and there's a lot of trees, like a lot of different types of trees. It's kind of very botanical, like, and a lot of narrow paths that crisscross over each other.
Hmm.
So it's like a maze, and unless you like, I know it pretty well, living in the area, so I know my way around, um, kind of the different spots in the cemetery. And so walking through, and I got a funny feeling, and not a bad feeling, but a funny feeling, and I just started. like looking around to the trees, and like up above me, and so like something just like made me aware that I needed to be more attentive to my surroundings. And as we approached where one path crisscrossed 45 degrees, sorry, or 90 degrees, sorry, over another one,
Mm-hmm.
when I was about 10 meters away from where it crisscrossed, like a plume of smoke or, vapor or something just came up from the path ahead of me. I couldn't see exactly where it came from because it's like behind graves, but it was definitely from the footpath.
Yeah.
And it kind of plumed up. And then all of a sudden, like a mini tornado just kind of went around, swirled slowly first, and then really quickly, just like straight up and into the trees and was gone.
Wow.
Now, it lasted probably about 10 seconds, maybe, yeah, 10 or 15 seconds. And I looked up into the trees as it went, and kind of like, I was nearly waiting for something else to happen. Like, it felt like something else was going to happen. But it didn't. Like, things just, like, the trees just, the wind stopped blowing and they calmed down again, and everything just got, normal. And like, I was kind of looking at the baby going, did you see that? And he didn't. He was oblivious, And then I was looking around, and like, I nearly wanted to see, was there like a groundskeeper or a gardener or someone to say,
Mm-hmm.
you never guess what I just saw,
Yeah.
And there was no one, like, no one around, and not
Mm-hmm.
even and then obviously, like, running through my mind was there a piece of equipment that let off smoke there? Was there like
Mm-hmm.
like, but quickly I realized there's nothing here but me and Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the way the plume was if you imagine, on a really cold day when you see someone smoking
Yeah.
outside a pub or something, and it's nighttime
Mm-hmm.
and there's light, and you just see that, like, when they let out a big exhale and you just
Mm-hmm.
see loads of smoke come out.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
you imagine that, like, multiplied by, say, 50, for the amount of smoke, like, that's the way it was, like, really thick,
Yeah.
dense, like, mist. It wasn't like, and like, it wasn't like, this was later in the afternoon. It was a dry day. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there was no condensation coming from the ground, or like the ground wasn't wet,
Mm-hmm.
anything like. So it was very, very bizarre, basically.
And what color was this? Like they say, this smoke or mist or
It would have
whatever.
been like a grey white color.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, just like just a grey white color.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was obviously bizarre. I went home,
Mm-hmm.
told my wife, when she came home, and she was like looking at me like, oh, here we go. you know you know the,
uh,
the the atheist that I'm married to was just having none of it. And then and she asked, oh, what else did you do today? Like, was there anything else happen?
mm-hmm.
And I was like, no. And well, yeah, I was like, no, nothing else happened. And then she said, how was Tom? And I said, great. And I said, look, we're in the Botanic Gardens as well. I took loads of videos. And then looking at one of the videos from the Botanic Gardens, she noticed that there was a video, I think it's like 13-second long clip, where he in a glass house, and he,
Yeah.
he's at the door, like, from one section to the next. And it's like, as I said, the sun's shining straight through, and it's really nice. And it's like real motley type, shadows of the leaves and all, very
Mm-hmm.
nice. And he, like, he's looking at me, and he starts throwing the hands in the air and kind of tries to run towards me. And I didn't say anything as it happened, like, in real
Mm-hmm.
time, but looking back at the video, there's like definitely some very strange, I want to say, orb type
Yeah.
stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, like, you're in a greenhouse, there's pollen, dust, all this kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff that could be caught in the sun. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I would never have looked at stuff like that twice and thought, oh, is that, does that mean something? But obviously, connected to what happened after
Mm-hmm.
in the timeline that very day,
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely, it definitely made me think twice about the orb
Yeah.
kind of situation I caught on video, and like even looking at the orb, it traveled in a very
Weird.
unnatural
Right.
way. So it went from, if you imagine, it went from, as I was looking at the screen, from the top left of the screen, like diagonally across the screen towards the bottom right corner, but then nearly took a very sharp angle back up
Right.
towards the direction it was coming. And like, it was just, not the type of thing you'd see even with pollen from a breeze. It would have had to be in a very, unusual kind of wind or breeze, we're in a glass house, there's no breeze.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was, I have to say, like, to me, that was like, of all the experiences I've had, like, I've had other more kind of visual, vivid ones as well, but like, that was the most kind of concrete one where I was like, I was 100% present, and I know what I see in 100%.
Yeah, I guess when you talk about kind of, that's the one that's concrete. You come away with a feeling of like something's happened there. I don't know what it is, but I know something's happened there.
Yeah.
And
I'm saying that, like,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, Darren, like,
Go
I'm
ahead.
saying that, like, I know how cliche it seems, walking through a graveyard and thinking you see, something like, it's the most cliche kind of, I suppose, situation you could think of when it comes to, oh, did I see a spirit, or did I see an apparition, or did I see something? But that's what happened. I walked through that graveyard. I've walked through it hundreds of times in the, so it's not unusual for me to be walking through a Glasnevin graveyard. It's no more unusual than someone in their local park to be walking through. So like, that's, to me, like, I know how cliche it sounds, but it's not cliche. That's just the walking route I take when I'm in my local area,
Yeah. No, I mean, and I guess for listeners, is like, it's, understand it's a massive graveyard. It's huge. At the
Over
botanical
1 million
garden.
graves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it 1 million? Jeez, I didn't know it was
1 million
that big.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
1 million.
Wow. Oh, my grandparents are buried there. Yeah.
So are mine.
Yeah.
There you go.
What was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, so that's this. It's really interesting there, and now pure speculation on my part. So pinch of salt. But what you're describing, that kind of plume of smoke or mist or whatever, right? Like, there's loads of associations with, like, the kind of the she with the good people, like, of that kind of materialization of like mist. There's loads of associations with spirits as well, like, but the bit we were talking about where it behaved like a wind, where it span and kind of went up into the trees, that's an interesting piece. Now again, that's again, this is total speculation. But there's a thing called Ongiha She, which is basically called the fairy wind. And that used to be a real thing, where kind of people were like a real concern for rural Irish people, that if the fairy wind touched you, if it hit you, that, like, you were in trouble. It wasn't a good thing. But it was also associated with how fairies just, you could travel in the wind, that kind of thing. But I think the bit that's really stands out for me is you almost had a kind of like that premonition feeling, like you knew something was going to happen.
Yeah,
and then it
was
did.
It was just the way the breeze just picked up, and something within me, like, I suppose, like, intuition or whatever it is, something in the pit of my stomach, I suppose, told me, look up and be aware of what's happening around you. You know what I mean? And I did, and I saw what I saw. Like, maybe something wanted to be seen, and gave me that. Gave me that. Precursor to get my attention. Otherwise, I could have been looking the other way for squirrels up in a tree, or playing
Yeah.
with Tom, or
Yeah.
whatever it was, but something kind of got
Mm.
something definitely got my attention, and
Yeah.
made me focus on where I was looking, like
Mhm.
focus my attention that way, and
Yeah.
that was before I seen what I saw, basically.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah. If put it this way, if it was something, uh, you know, spiritual, or of another world, it definitely wanted me to see it. You know what I mean? It definitely, definitely got my attention before anything happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Wow. Well, that's really interesting. It's such a
Yeah,
different thing. Like that plume of smoke, and it sounds
yeah.
like it was quite distinct and like big, boy,
Oh yeah, no, it wasn't. It was unexplainable, basically. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was, you know, unexplainable. There was no reason. Like, there was no grate. There was no shore in
Mm,
the
mm,
footpath. There was no one using machinery. There was no one burning anything. There was
mm-hmm,
like nothing, and like it was fairly substantial in size, and for the amount of time, for the length of time it happened.
mm-hmm,
And funny thing about it was, I did stop my tracks when it started, but then I walked towards it. Basically, I kept
mm,
walking up the path, hoping to see the origin of, like, where it was coming from,
mm-hmm.
the source, basically. And it was nearly when I made that decision, that's when it just whisked away and it was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like, I guess, as you said, like, your idea of where it might be come from is as good a reason as any. you
Yeah.
know
Who knows? Yeah. Who
exactly.
knows? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
And
well, well. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. It's been fantastic talking to you about it. And again about the audio, or the the experience. I was going to say the
yeah,
audio you heard.
yeah.
What
So,
am I trying to
yeah,
say?
I couldn't get the word
Yeah,
out as
yeah.
well. The
But
audible
the
experience.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, the auditory experience
Yeah, that's
that
it.
you there
That's
we
the
got
auditory.
there in the end. Experience you had. You know, yeah, really interesting stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm sure our listeners will be delighted to share their thoughts and hear more in the future.
Great. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you very much, Glenn. An absolute
All right.
pleasure.
Good luck.